Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be, or good evening or good night. This is Jen at JensArtyInclinations, a place to create, share and play.
What a fun, easy, beginner-friendly way to do creative exercises, improve our artistic confidence, and, refine your personal style, or find it if you haven't found it already. So I hope you'll join me and, we'll just play about weekly-ish.
Hello everyone. I was inspired by a class I took that Alison Wells ran recently, and she was doing some negative stenciling. So that's where you cut out a shape. She was drawing around the shape and then hand painting around them. It kind of brought me back to some of the things that I did. And so this is inspired by that. Now, what I've done is I've done some on little cards. I've done some on playing cards, as you saw. I was just trying to find my feet here. And as you can see with the apple, I just used the shape and painted around them. So this is one that I did over a background that had a pattern on it. And I simply just sticking it on, I am trying to speak. I am simply just sticking it down onto a little card that I have. I, bought a little lovely box of these craft coloured business cards, just plain card. Did a little bit of inking around the edges, and then I've got a little journal card. Now, just to put a bit of a finishing touch on, I decided that I'd have a go at putting on just some little stamps, just a subtle little piece in it. Now, I'm using waterproof black here, just because the acrylic gold is really, really shiny. And you can see I've lined it with a black pen as well, and I wanted it to just feel a bit smudgy. And, that was sort of my first go at what we'll be doing today. And look, these are all my shapes. I cut all of these out freehand and just played with scissors, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. Your shapes can be as simple as you want. You can even use any of your punches that you have or any die cutting that you've got. Shapes are really easy. Grab a magazine, cut around a shape that you like, an actual image or photo. Anything like that will work. Now, the reason that I did it this way is because I want to reuse these. I think that they're a handy little thing to have in your craft stash. Just some really simple shapes. I did these out of cardboard, and as you go over them with the acrylic paint, here I'm just using a pen to hold that down so that I can get that gold all the way around. I did use a fair bit of gold. Now, it's hard to see in the camera, but there is a slight pattern in the page underneath. And, this is a technique that you can use just a credit card or a piece of cardboard, anything like that, or one of those squidgies, and you can literally just spread your paint out around it. So that's a nice, easy way to do it. I actually go on to doing it with a paintbrush, but I just, if you don't have something that you want to use, this is just as good. Plus, it gives you a really smooth finish, so that's kind of cool. Now, when I took it up, I thought, well, that doesn't look like trees, so that's okay. I just played a little bit more, and I just put a slight edge on that. So I didn't have quite enough gold there, so I just picked up a little bit on my finger, and I just smudged it around, feathered it out a little bit, and then that gives the impression of trees. Pressing a stamp in without any ink on it, and you get an impression. And this is another way you can negative stencil. Put your stencil over, grab a baby wipe, and wipe up the paint. So it's a little hard to see the pattern, I know. Sorry, I wanted to use gold, and of course it's flashing all over the place and knocking out all the other colours. But yeah, if you do that, then you actually get the little patterns of the stencil underneath. So that's pretty cool. Like, it really can look quite effective. So then you can have a bit of a pattern in your edge. So there you go, little bit of fun. And, I can play with that and finish it off, or it can just be a base that can sit aside somewhere. Now, I hope you can tell this is a girl or a guy, but it's a figure with long hair. I'm thinking of a free spirit kind of figure. So here you can see the pattern in the paper. So these were all gel prints that I did I did them in green, and then I added a little bit of white to some, and I added a little bit of black to some, so it was all in the same shades. So I had all these green pattern pieces and did, a couple of prints and lifts off them. So this one I decided that I'd go with this really creamy yellow, really pale, and I already love how that's looking. Then I also had a pear that I cut out. That was probably the easiest one to cut out. I'm quite impressed with myself that I did these freehand. Have a go at that, because then they are completely original. It's surprising. Sometimes you might not be in the mood and you can't get any of the shapes right. Other times, you do. Now, this is something that I picked up off Alison Wells. Mix in a little bit of other paint around your edge, and then you can add some contrast and a little bit of light and shade to your pieces. So that's what I'm playing with here, adding a little bit of gold, and it sort of almost looks like a little bit of shadow, which is kind of cool. And here I'm just thinking, well, there is white against that yellow, so that is actually really hard to see what's going on there. So I'm just trying to pick up the definition. Now, look, this isn't fine arts. You don't need to cut out your shapes. You can just use anything that you've got that's a shape. You might have, I don't know, a piece of interesting cardboard that came in, your last packaging from Amazon, or anything like that. Or is it just me with lots of packaging? Lucky I'm a junk journaler, because then I get to use them all. Anyhow, that's that little piece. I did accidentally tear the paper there because I left my pear down a little bit too long, but that's fine. It worked out. So I'm just popping that aside to dry off, and now I'm getting out my little cards. So these were all just pre-cut cards. I think they were like $1 or something. So I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I'll grab that little box. Thank you very much. And I am just doing some basic shapes into the little cards and painting around them, playing with different colours, just, seeing what I come up with. So here I've got golden brown. So that's pretty cool, just adding a little bit more texture. And this one is a little giraffe head. My youngest son loves giraffes. Oh, that's right. And I added a bit of gold for highlight. And then I really did darken that up quite a bit in the end on this side. So, yeah, I love the mottlety. And I found when I dabbed my brush, I liked that finish. But you might like to see the paint strokes in them. Or, as I say, you might like that really smooth surface if you use some kind of a card. So, yeah, just looking at my result, having a bit of a think. Now, I probably would come back to these when you see the finished result. I would probably come back to them and add a saying or something on them. And I think that's something that I can do. What am I trying to say? If I just have a little moment to think, I'll work out what I was trying to say. Oh, yeah, to fit the purpose of whatever, or the theme of whatever I'm working on at the time. So I'm happy to add those quotes after. But they do give you a nice base, and they fit into any nice little pocket. So a lovely way to finish them off. You could do some collaging underneath, you can do some gel prints underneath, you could do some stamping underneath, and then do the painting around the edge. Anything like that will give it a nice bit of texture. So this one is a pineapple, if you can't work out what it is. And I did accidentally just get it off centre, out of alignment, but I managed to get it back up again. So this time on the brown card, using that really pale colour, and I actually quite like that against the brown of the cardstock or the craft stock paper. Really nice. And you can go back in if you need to. I just wanted to finish that edge up a little bit. Now I've got a little bird. It's sort of like a budgie kind of bird. And this time, instead of going all the way to the edge, I just did a kind of starburst out. I like this. I think I'll reproduce this. So see how we're doing the same thing, but each time we might add something a little bit different. This time I decided I'd start with a stamp first, and I actually did just put some paint over my stamp. Very naughty, but that's a very cheap one. and doing a little strawberry just with some gold, and again, not going all the way out. And I loved that effect. I was like, ooh, onto something there. So I played a bit again with my other pieces, and this is the one that you saw me do earlier, and I just added some more little stamps and things to them. So yeah, it's amazing how sometimes you just add one little bit, you know, that's just a normal check stamp, and you come up with something, you know, entirely different. So I liked the contrast, a dark and a light. And this one, loved how this turned out. So decided to go back to using my ink pad. This is just vintage photo. Placing it over, and I pressed on the edges more. How awesome does that look? So can't you just imagine it with a little quote or something? Now, this is something else. Sometimes we've got these little pattern stencils. So I can see pretty clearly what's got paint on it and what doesn't. So all I'm doing is I'm stenciling through around the edge of the bird instead of over the bird. And so it's sort of going off the edge and onto that yellow creamy colour. See? And so I thought, yep, I'll just add a little bit more as I go around, trying to choose which little feather, or what should I say, leaf and stem. I know what I'm talking about. Really, really don't. So again, this is a simple technique, really fun to play, and it'll get you used to using your acrylics, which is really kind of cool, and then mixing that up with a little bit of mixed media. So using your acrylics, playing a little bit with some of perhaps your stamps, or just use, you know, a paper roll to put some impressions into it. You can do some prints over it, like if I did a print over here and, you know, put a cardboard tube into black paint, I could have a lovely big black circle orbing out of her head, and, you know, you can really play. So it's really fun. Here I decided that I had the gold, and then I wanted to see the shadow on the gold. And then again, I'm just using some antique linen here, and I'm just stamping over just to give a slight impression. And then I pop some little words across the bottom. So that's just one of those script stamps that we sometimes get. And yeah, lots of fun. So here you'll see I decided that I wanted to just define that edge a little bit. So it's almost like, remember how when we were doing our split pins and I said it's like doing little mini pieces of art? This is another way that you can do that. And I chose the business card size as opposed to the slightly larger journal cards that I'd normally do, because I didn't want to overwhelm myself. I just wanted little things, little simple things that weren't too long to do, that I could just play. So yeah, that was really fun. The other great thing about this is if you gesso over some recycled packaging, you'll actually have another effect again under it. And remember how we tinted that when we were using our moulding paste? So you can tint your gesso as well underneath. You can, you know, add texture. Imagine these with a bit of moulding paste over them. Anyway, so I inked around the edges of all of them just to, you know, how I like to define them. It just makes things pop. And now that this piece is dry, I decided that I'd play a little bit more with the colour. I am just finessing. So look, I am very sorry that I'm taking a little bit longer than I normally do to get my videos out. And I've got a really exciting one coming up soon. That's an unboxing that I was asked to do, and I'm so excited, from one of my favourite businesses. So doubly exciting. And I'm setting myself a little bit of a challenge. Maybe you can challenge yourself too. Same sort of thing here, using the script stamp to go over some places, just adding some shadows around. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pen and I'm going to play about and line it. I think that's the next thing. So already that's kind of looking really cool. Love just adding this little check stamp. I just love the look of it. It's quite interesting. It gives you a real sharpness to those lovely smooth lines of the pear. So yeah, that's a bit cool. Now this is I think it's a 03 or a 05, I think. And all I'm doing is really light lines. So I started just by defining a little bit, and then I heavy it up, but I want them to be sort of squiggly and messy, still around the edge, but you can see I'm doing lots of little strokes. And I felt like that really went with the grunginess of the texture coming through underneath in the gel print there, and of course what's going on around the edge. And then it also lifts the figure off the edge as well. And again, that will leave some nice space if I want to add a quote later, or I can leave it as it is. So really just tackling, adding a little bit more on some areas to make it look a little bit more shadowy, just a light touch in other places. So yeah, quite fun actually. And the paint gives you a little bit of a ridge, so you can kind of really go up against that. So yeah, that's really fun. Plus, it can help you add some definition if you've lost it. So there it is, sort of finished up with my pen. And I did a little bit on the pear as well. And I did a lighter touch on the pear, because that's what you do. You start with a light touch, and then you can always add more, as so many people say, harder to take away. So I felt like the pear didn't need as much, and that's probably because of the extra definition underneath. Now I'm going to stick them onto the cards. So the only measuring I was doing was to measure the actual card against the piece itself. So nothing difficult at all there. Just checked the width against a card and, checked the height. And here you go. So see how I'm just checking that it will go within, because I want it to be bordered. Fun, 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 fun. Just using a ruler, I really wanted the torn edge to go with that rustic grunginess that we've got going. So you can really see the yellows and the greens, even though they're in the same spectrum, they still kind of pop against each other, which is pretty wonderful. And here I'm just checking the height. So just nudging it up a little bit for where I want it to sit on the card. Or you could cover it right around the card, similar to what I did in the first one. It really is, totally up to you. It's really free form. I'm just putting them on the cards because that makes it a really easy and quick, little journal card. So to me, that would be lovely. And I could add a tag on top. I'd probably add a ribbon or something to the top of that at some point. But I think that that's finished. All I'll do is I'll just ink around the edge. There you go. That's done. So now doing the same with the other one, measuring it. I knew that she was a little bit wider than the card, so I think she goes right to the edge. Really goes on the edge there. Yes, it does. And again, just inking around the edges, making sure it's really nicely sealed. And then that also, inking covers up, the fussy cutting, working or not working. So look, that's what we did. So that's what I did before. And then this is what we ended up with. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding some final touches of pen just around the others. And, then we're finished. So I hope you enjoyed what you saw today. I hope you have a bit of a play. And enjoy your negative stenciling, everybody. I'd love it if you could leave me a comment below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you next time. And in the meantime, keep creating.